welcome to Talk of the Bay. I'm your host, George Cadman, and today, in the first half of the program, I'll be joined by Tony Nuñez, Marketing and Communications Director at Community Bridges, a nonprofit organization here in Santa Cruz County, where he leads strategic messaging to highlight the impact of the nonprofit's 10 programs serving more than 20,000 children, families, and seniors each year across Santa Cruz, Monterey, and San Benito Counties. These programs deliver hot meals to homebound seniors, provide accessible transportation to medical appointments, connect families to food and housing resources, nurture children through early education, and offer critical recovery support during disasters. We will be discussing the important work of Community Bridges in our Tri-County area, as well as the upcoming Pie for the People event on October 26th, which will benefit this critical community resource this year. In the second half of the program from 5:30 to 6 p.m., I'll be joined by local educator and lifelong learner Megan Grenier, who over the last 28 years has worked in a variety of educational settings as an elementary classroom teacher, an education specialist for a charter school, a mentor teacher, a private tutor, and as a director of a learning lab to help struggling readers. Her passion is to help students learn to read proficiently. We'll be discussing the importance of literacy to individuals and society. Two recent California Senate bills passed last year requiring schools in California to screen all kindergarten through second grade students for reading difficulties, including dyslexia, as well as two upcoming dyslexia simulations that she and other educators are hosting to raise awareness about the frustrations and struggles that individuals with dyslexia experience on a daily basis in the classroom. They will encourage parents, teachers, and lifelong learners to register for the simulations, which will be held at the Scotts Valley Public Library and at the Simpkins Swim Center Live Oak Annex in October, which is Dyslexia Awareness Month. That's all coming up today on Talk of the Bay here at KSQD 90.7 FM. Again, this is Talk of the Bay. And at this point, I want to bring in my first guest, Tony Nuñez of Community Bridges. Hi, Tony. Thanks for joining me today on Talk of the Bay. I really appreciate it.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So let's start off by just mentioning again that Pie for the People, which is an event that's put on every year by a small group of Santa Cruz residents, is going to be benefiting Community Bridges, which is a nonprofit organization that you're employed by this year. And that event is coming up on October 26th. From 1 to 3 p.m. at the Homeless Garden Project. Pie for the People is a local community group raising money for good causes and bringing neighbors together over delicious, sweet, and savory pies. This year, they're raising money for this local nonprofit, Community Bridges, which, again, as we said in the beginning, provides essential services like healthcare and nutrition to thousands of children, families, and seniors facing poverty, food insecurity, and other barriers. That's, again, going to be on October 26th from 1 to 3 p.m. at the Homeless Garden Project. We'll mention that again at the end. And to participate, you come out, bring a vegetarian pie, and then it's a potluck style, and folks pay a $5 donation for a slice, and all of the proceeds go to Community Bridges this year. So anyway, hi, Tony. Thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So why don't we start by just tell us a little bit about Community Bridges. How long has the organization been around? When was it founded? And what is Community Bridges' mission?
Yeah, so Community Bridges was officially founded in 1977. So we're coming up on our 50th anniversary in 2027, which is an exciting milestone for us to hit. So exciting times here for this organization, but also challenging times, right, with everything that's happening at the federal level and at the state level, and then both here locally. So a little bit about how Community Bridges began. So in the early 1970s, there was obviously the people-led Black Panther movement and other civil rights movements that were branching out from the early and late 60s. one of the movements that was a part of the Santa Cruz County community was the school lunches for kids programs that was happening here in Santa Cruz and throughout the county, essentially providing free lunches for kids who could not afford to bring a lunch to school or to have a lunch during the summer as well. And so really Community Bridges' roots can be traced back to that program, to the local section of the Black Panther Party here in Santa Cruz County. And slowly but surely, that small group of folks, of organizers, grew into what Community Bridges is today, which is an organization that has 10 programs providing service, as you said, to more than 20,000 people in Santa Cruz County, San Benito County, and Monterey County. Several of our programs receive federal and state funding, and then there's other programs that are really reliant on local donations and the and local philanthropy and the generosity of our community. And so some of our original programs that make up the Community Bridges roster, so to speak, that were started back in the 1970s are the Meals on Wheels program, which back then was known as the Golden Age Nutrition Program, slowly became the Meals on Wheels program as we got federal funding to support that program. Our Lifeline program, which is started as an all-volunteer effort, essentially getting local older adults, people 55 or 60 and over, to medical appointments for them that weren't able to use the bus because of mobility issues, and so getting them to and from their doctor's appointments so they could stay nice and healthy and age with grace. And then other programs as well. Some of our Family Resource Center sites, we have 4 of them in our Family Resource Collective. One in Watsonville called La Manzana Community Resources. That one has a lot of ingrained history from dating all the way back to the cannery strikes that happened there in Watsonville back in the 80s. And all the civil rights movements that happened there in Watsonville. We also have another Family Resource Center site up in Felton. It's the Mountain Community Resources, which started, and its roots can date back to 1982, that first really devastating flood and landslides that happened up in the valley in Felton that took local lives. And the community rallied then to start up the Valley Resource Center, as it was known back then. And slowly but surely, it's turned into the Mountain Community Resources and become a part of the family of the Community Bridges programs. So we do quite a bit. As you said, healthcare and nutrition are really our specialties, but emergency and crisis services as well are things that we specialize as well in. Responding
when there's a disaster or natural disaster.
Exactly. And our county has no shortage of those, right? It's kind of the push and the pull of Santa Cruz County and living here, right? It's an incredibly beautiful place to call home. It's also extremely susceptible to environmental disasters like we've seen, whether it be the most recent one happening over at the wharf, at the Santa Cruz Wharf, with all of the damage that happened there and the shutdown of those businesses. Our resource center over in the Beach Flats area by the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk, Nueva Vista Community Resources, responded to that and were able to help some of the businesses and some of the employees that were out of work for several weeks, if not close to a month, with some emergency funds that came from the Community Foundation, Santa Cruz County. Same thing.
It could be a fire, a flood,
could be a fire, a flood. Yeah. Exactly. So CZU fires, Pajaro flood, we're there at the very beginning of it and just trying to help in any ways that we can.
So the Community Bridges office is in Watsonville, correct? But you serve the Tri-County area. I'm looking at a map here, and you already mentioned Ben Lomond, but there's also Felton, but there's also Ben Lomond, Scotts Valley, Live Oak, Santa Cruz, Freedom, and of course Watsonville. Do you serve any south of Watsonville?
Definitely, yeah. So so some of our programs dip into Monterey County, and some of them also dip into San Benito County. So, for instance, the Meals on Wheels program is really one of the few programs that is only serving Santa Cruz County residents, right? So we administer the program through federal funding and state funding and serve local seniors. And about a third of our funding for Meals on Wheels is all donations, right? So that allows us to serve 1,800 seniors in Santa Cruz County every single year. But we have other programs like the Child and Adult Care Food Program that is fully funded through the federal government that reimburses local child care providers for doing the real basic of the real basic thing of serving good, nutritious foods to the children that they see and they look after every day. And so that program serves people all the way up in the Santa Cruz Mountains in the Felton-Ben Lomond area, all the way down to King City in southern Monterey County, right? We have a program, we administer the local WIC program. And so we have folks that in Santa Cruz County, women, children, and infants in Santa Cruz County that benefit from that program. But then we also serve the Pajaro Valley and some folks on the outskirts of the Aromas and Gilroy area as well too. And so, we have several programs that also pull in from San Benito County, like Elder Day, which was previously headquartered actually right around the corner from here in Santa Cruz. And now our headquarters is abutting the Community Bridges headquarters for Elder Day. And that central location there on the Central Coast allows us to serve all three counties, Monterey, Santa Cruz, and San Benito counties, shortening the drive for several folks in the San Juan Bautista area that are able to benefit from Elder Day services. And we provide transportation to those folks as well to get from their house to Elder Day, have an amazing time there with our nurses and our staff, and then go back home and spend the rest of the day with their family.
And when is Elder Day? Is that once a year? Is that annual?
Elder Day is what is called an adult day care program. And so it is right in the middle of like your traditional senior centers. So there's like a Watsonville Senior Center and of like a long-term living facility, long-term care facility where older adults and folks with disabilities are able to receive the care that they need. And so Elder Day provides daily care for older adults.
It's every day?
Every day.
Oh,
it's
wow.
Monday through Friday.
Okay.
It's folks, like I said, they get picked up by Liftline, our transportation service, and they're driven down to Watsonville or up to Watsonville, depending on where you're at in the Central Coast. And then from there, they really benefit from a plethora of different services from that program. We have it's one of our programs that's based in healthcare. So we have nurses. We work with participants, primary care physicians to come up with plans of care. And so, like I said, kind of right in between what a traditional senior center would have. So, your daily activities, so your bingo and your dancing and your arts and your coloring and all that sort of stuff. But then we also go above and beyond that, right, and provide healthcare services with our nursing team there and our physicians as well that take them through, actual workouts that we work with their primary care provider to design to keep them nice and healthy.
And this is federally funded, you said?
So this is one of our programs that actually is not federally funded.
Oh, okay.
So this is a program that works very similarly to other long-term care facilities, and so it's paid through participants' health insurance, and so we receive a lot of participants who have Medicare. We have a lot of participants who have Medi-Cal, Medicaid, known at the federal level. So folks who are private pay, HMO, PPO, all that sort of stuff, because it is a healthcare-based program. And so I know I touched on it a little bit in terms of the impact of the federal funding cuts that were approved on Independence Day this year on July 4th that are going to be rolled out over the next few years. And Elder Day is one of those programs that we're looking at saying, we understand that, the sort of impacts and the cuts to Medicaid are going to have to Medi-Cal patients here in our community, and that's one of the programs that we expect, is going to continue to be a challenge as the cuts roll down.
Yeah, I heard recently from somebody that works at the county that those cuts are expected to be in the tens of millions here in Santa Cruz County, and that's going to be a real blow. You mentioned it's going to be rolling out. It's going to come in phases, apparently, the cuts. And you mentioned challenges also at the state and local level. Can you talk about that as well? And then how does Community Bridges expect to respond to these challenges? Definitely.
So at the federal level, we're seeing the biggest challenges, and I think to our programs are definitely the cuts to Medicaid, and also to SNAP and other food assistance programs. Here it's known as CalFresh, right, in California, because California has to put a Cal in front of everything. And so the way that we're seeing these cuts is by an increase in the need for our services, right? So we administer and get people signed up for health insurance through Medicaid, through our partners at the Alliance, the Central California Alliance for Health. Mm-hmm. And so we get them signed up through there. And the reality with the cuts that were passed in H.R. 1 and the Big Beautiful Bill is that those folks who were signed up are going to slowly be kicked off for a bunch of different reasons, but fewer and fewer people are going to be able to access Medicaid, Medi-Cal services. And so what that means is that there's going to be fewer and fewer people that are available to go and still access care, right? They're not going to be able to go to their doctor. They're not going to be able to get their usual health checkup, or they're just going to refuse care. And so that is going to really create a lot of challenges for folks who are waiting longer to go to their primary care doctor, who no longer have access to their primary care doctor. And people are going to get sicker, right? They're going to be less healthy. And so the challenge for us is how do we continue to serve those folks? And then how do we get them signed up for Medi-Cal before a really important date that's coming up at the end of this year, before folks who are undocumented, which we serve a few thousand folks who are undocumented throughout the county, to get them signed up for Medicaid, Medi-Cal before this January 1st, 2026 cutoff date, right? Where people who are undocumented will no longer be able to sign up for full coverage of Medi-Cal.
Is that a decision coming down from the governor?
So that is a decision coming down from the governor.
What was the reasoning for that?
So
the federal cuts?
No, that was a decision that happened at the state level. And so they overextended themselves a little bit at the state level. And so they had to cut back and for a budget shortfall that they had this year. And so in the May revise, Governor Newsom proposed a couple of cuts to the Medi-Cal program and a few other different programs. And luckily, the actual cuts that were approved by the state legislature were not as bad as the initial cuts, but they're still going to have a negative impact on the community. And along with the cuts to healthcare, the cuts to SNAP and to the food assistance programs that are happening at the federal level that are going to also roll out over the next few years, it's just going to mean more and more people are going to have a harder time accessing good, healthy food, right?
Yeah. I'm speaking with Tony Nuñez, Marketing and Communications Director at Community Bridges, where he leads strategic messaging to highlight the impact of that nonprofit's 10 programs, which, as he already mentioned, serve more than 20,000 children, families, and seniors each year across our Tri-County area. This includes hot meals to homebound seniors, accessible transportation to medical appointments, connecting families to food and housing resources, and nurturing children through early education, and also offering critical support during disasters. I want to remind natural disasters. I want to remind folks that the upcoming Pie for the People event on October 26th at the Homeless Garden Project out on the west side will be raising funds for this very critical organization, Community Bridges, again, serving our Tri-County area with all of those services at low or no cost to participants. Again, Pie for the People is a local community group raising money for good causes, and this year they've picked Community Bridges to benefit from their event. So what you do is bring a pie. It's a potluck, a sweet or savory vegetarian pie, and folks pay $5 for a slice. You hang out and enjoy the gorgeous Homeless Garden Project and connecting with community, and also donating to Community Bridges, the organization we're talking about today. We have less than 10 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we cover everything that you wanted to cover today, Tony.
Of course.
So, we already talked about the budget cuts, and obviously that's probably one of the most critical things that the organization is facing. Maybe talk a little bit about how you anticipate that, dealing with that shortfall in the coming months and years, and also just Any other challenges you want to talk about, or you also mentioned it's going to be your 50th anniversary this year as an organization. So perhaps you want to talk about if there's you're going to be doing something to commemorate that, or just anything you want to make sure we cover in the last 8 minutes or so of the show.
Definitely, I can talk a little bit more about how we're gearing up for what we expect is going to be a very challenging kind of 4 years, but I think if I wanted your listeners to know a little bit more about Community Bridges, it's that all of our programs are really intertwined. So they all work together to create a real kind of system that helps all the individuals. And so some of the like natural connections that I talked about before are we have 3 different divisions. We have our seniors and transportation division. We have our family resource collective, and then we also have our children and nutrition division. And so I'll give you an example of why Community Bridges is such a great investment for people who are looking into making a donation or volunteering or just staying up to date with what's happening with us. So in our seniors and transportation division, we have Liftline, which provides the transportation for seniors who are receiving services from Elder Day or from Meals on Wheels, right? And so that program is a awesome connector to the other programs in that same division. And so I'll give you an example of what that looks like for a senior. So I'll give you an example down in Watsonville. So a senior in Watsonville, through the Community Bridges family of programs, can start their day by getting on Liftline, by then having that Liftline bus for no cost, right, if they qualify to receive those services, to get down to the Watsonville Senior Center where they're able to get a Meals on Wheels hot, tasty lunch for no cost, and are also able to get connected to other nonprofits serving seniors at the Watsonville Senior Center. And then through all of that, at the end of the day, when they're done and they're able to hang out with their friends, they're able to have fun, they're able to get help with their taxes or legal aid, or just have another a peer counseling service that's available at that senior center, then they get back on the Liftline bus and they go back home and they're there to be with their family the rest of the day, right? And so just this really interconnected kind of family of services is why I think that for folks who are looking to support people in need and people who and are looking to meet this unfunded gap in our social services, why Community Bridges I think is such a great place for you to invest your dollars. I think in terms of the next 4 years, we all know that this is going to be challenging, right? And whether you have Medicaid or you or Medi-Cal, or if you don't, right? We understand that this is going to be challenging because the folks that are going to get kicked off of Medicaid, Medi-Cal, are not going to disappear, right? They're going to continue to go to the doctor. They're going to continue to go to our ERs, and they're going to cause a lot of pressure for everybody, right? And so those hospitals are going to have to make up for the cost somehow. Yeah. And that cost is going to go on to the rest of us, right? And so we have to realize that all of these decisions that are being made and all of these cuts that are happening over the next 4 years to our local social safety net are going to impact us all. Mm-hmm. And I think as a community, and we really, implore our community to do this, is we can't wait around and hope that things are going to change at the federal level of government. Mm-hmm. We can't wait around and hope that things are going to change at the state level of government, right? Like, we always feel like we have the solutions here locally. And the solutions here locally are really what Community Bridges is founded on, right? Is coming together as a community to do what is right. So whether it be, starting off whether it be Liftline starting off as a completely all volunteer funded program back in the 70s and building itself into what it is today, or the same thing as Community Bridges was founded, back in the early 70s, of doing the simple thing and the right thing of feeding kids meals for kids who are feeding meals to kids who are in need, right? Is we can all do that. we all have the power to make a positive change in our community. And we should not expect people from the outside to come in and try to save us. We have the resources we need here.
How can people get involved? How can they volunteer at Community Bridges? How can they donate? Share the website?
Yeah, definitely. So the best place for all of that is communitybridges.org. Just go ahead, that's our website. People can learn about our programs there. They can learn about our mission, our vision, our values. They could sign up to volunteer. And of course, they can donate, as you said, right? We have 3 galas throughout the year that support different programs. So our summer gala, the Farm to Fork Gala, which happens in South Santa Cruz County, just actually happened. We have one that's happening on Friday, October 24th, up in Felton. That one's the Mountain Affair, which supports directly the Mountain Community Resources Center up there. And then we have in February, Food from the Heart, which supports Meals on Wheels for Santa Cruz County. And so there's a bunch of different ways that you can support Community Bridges. If you don't have the dollars, we would love if you can roll up the sleeves and volunteer and help us that way. So, any way that you can support us is good for us and is good for the community.
And that's at communitybridges.org to find out about all the events you talked about, the volunteer opportunities, how to donate, etc.
Definitely.
Okay. And we only have 1 minute left here. I want to remind listeners that, again, the upcoming Pie for the People event, which is going to be on October 26th. It's a Sunday from 1 to 3 p.m. at the Homeless Garden Project Farm on the west side of Santa Cruz, is going to benefit Community Bridges, the nonprofit that Tony Nuñez has been talking about with me for the last half hour. And I just want to remind folks that is where you bring a vegetarian, savory, or sweet pie. It's a potluck style at the beautiful Homeless Garden Project. And everyone donates $5 as a donation for a slice of pie, and all of the proceeds will go to Community Bridges this year. Again, October 26th, 1 to 3 p.m. at the Homeless Garden Project. Thank you so much for joining me today, Tony. I really appreciate you coming in and taking the time to tell us about Community Bridges.
Anytime. Thanks so much for having us.
And I appreciate all the wonderful work that the organization is doing in our Tri-County area. Thank you. In the second half of the show, I'm joined by Megan Grenier, who over the last 28 years has worked in a variety of educational settings as an elementary classroom teacher and education specialist for a charter school. She's been a mentor teacher, a private tutor, and a director of a learning lab to help struggling readers using the Orton-Gillingham approach. Her passion is to help students learn to read proficiently. We'll be discussing the importance of literacy to individuals and society. 2 recent California Senate bills passed last year requiring schools in California to screen all kindergarten through 2nd grade students for reading difficulties, including dyslexia, this school year, as well as 2 upcoming dyslexia simulations she and other educators are hosting to raise awareness about the frustrations and struggles that individuals with dyslexia experience on a daily basis in the classroom. And I'm very happy to be joined by Megan Grenier.
Thank you, George.
Yeah, of course. I'm so glad you could do this. Let's talk a little bit about October being Dyslexia Awareness Month and why you've organized these simulations coming up. And you could maybe throw out the dates and the locations and what people can expect if they attend.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again for hosting me. And as you said, I wish that I had a couple colleagues with me because I'm shy, but I'm doing this.
You're doing great so far.
I'm doing this to help all of the struggling readers out there. I'm having courage.
Yeah. And we can always take some phone calls in a little bit.
Okay. So as you mentioned, October is Dyslexia Awareness Month, which is why we have organized local dyslexia and reading intervention specialists to provide these hands-on learning experiences. The first simulation is scheduled for this Thursday at 6:30 p.m. at the Scotts Valley Library. And the second one is on Saturday, October 11th at the Live Oak Annex at 12 p.m. And a lot of people don't know where the Live Oak Annex is, but it's right next to the Simpkins Swim Center.
Okay. Yeah, I've never been there.
Yeah,
That's pretty easy to find. I know where the Simpkins Swim Center is. I go hiking behind it all the time in Swan Lake.
Yeah, you've got to pop in there. They've got books that you can check out. study rooms.
Had no clue. Thank you for informing us about that. So, again, the first simulation is scheduled for this Thursday at 6:30 at the Scotts Valley Library, and the second one is on Saturday, October 11th at the Live Oak Annex, which, as Megan mentioned, is next to the Simpkins Swim Center. So, seeing here that you encourage pre-registration, do you expect it to be really well attended? Is that why, or you're just trying to get a handle on how many people to expect?
It helps us to have a handle on how many people to expect because we have a lot of materials that we need to prepare, and we are trying to simulate what it feels like to be in a busy classroom. So the more people we have, the better the simulation is.
Because of the distractions that folks experience with a lot of talking and noise in the background.
Exactly.
Okay. So what can people expect if they attend the dyslexia simulations?
That's a great question. So first of all, when we were talking earlier, I really loved how you kind of put this in perspective and said that, there's just so many distressing things that are happening around the world right now. And, why should we care about dyslexia and reading? And you so poignantly pointed out that it's so important now more than ever to have this opportunity to walk in someone else's shoes and to experience the world from somebody else's perspective, which is what the dyslexia simulation is all about. So participants will rotate around to 6 hands-on stations, and they will perform language-related tasks. And it's all designed to increase awareness of the difficulties and frustrations that people with dyslexia encounter in the classroom on a daily basis. And then we leave time afterwards to sort of have a debrief because we've done these in the past and it brings up a lot of emotion for people, either because they have a child that's dyslexic and they feel like they were too hard on their child, or parents that were dyslexic themselves and were never diagnosed. So it's important to have that time to debrief. And also, there's also a lot of frustration, especially from classroom teachers that come, because a lot of them feel like they don't have the proper tools in the classroom to either identify their students or have the proper materials. So it's a great springboard for conversation on what can be done better in the classroom setting to identify our struggling readers.
So it can be a resource for educators as well to come and learn about how to identify kids with learning disabilities or including dyslexia and ways to address it in the classroom setting.
That's right. And so we had a simulation in January, and we had one parent that came, and she was so moved by the experience that she actually started a dyslexia support group. And she has quarterly meetings at the Capitola Library. The next one, I believe, is on November 19th. I'll have to confirm that with you. But she has a neuropsychologist that's going to come and talk about assessments.
Okay. I'll pull that up so
okay.
we can make sure we announce it. So what is dyslexia?
Okay.
And some people may not know. I mean, I have an idea that I think it's when people who have dyslexia will be looking at a sentence and see the words kind of mixed up or jumbled in some way or backwards. Is that accurate?
Not really, actually.
Okay.
So it is a language-based learning disability, and it results in a difficulty with word recognition, spelling, and reading abilities. And then, of course, if it's difficult for you to read, then there's secondary problems, which include trouble with reading comprehension, reduced reading experience, because, of course, if you can't read, you're not going to choose to read. And that, of course, can impede the growth of vocabulary and background knowledge.
Okay.
And according to the U.S. Department of Education statistics in 2018, they estimated that about 2 million children are receiving special education services for dyslexia.
2 million in the United States?
And they think that that's grossly underestimated because schools are not mandated.
It gets overlooked.
And schools are not mandated to report it. And dyslexia does run in families, and it has a genetic marker.
So what is dyslexia not? We talked about what it is. What is it not?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up because people actually say that there's the gift of dyslexia because it's not a lack of intelligence. It's not a lack of desire to learn. It occurs in people of all backgrounds and all intellectual levels, and individuals with dyslexia are often really gifted in other areas and possess exceptional problem-solving skills, creative thinking, and ability to see the bigger picture. There's a lot of famous dyslexic people like Albert Einstein, Charles Schwab. Our governor, Gavin Newsom, is famously dyslexic, and he actually wrote a children's book about dyslexia.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So I pulled up the information about the dyslexia support group, and that meets. They just had a meeting on last month, August 27th, but there's one coming up November 19th, 6 p.m., February 25th at 6 p.m., and May 6th at 6 p.m., and they meet at the Capitola Branch Library. It says here it's a welcoming and informative support group dedicated to parents and educators of children with dyslexia, a safe space to share experiences, learn strategies, and connect with others who understand the unique challenges and strengths of dyslexic learners. Again, November 19th, February 25th, and May 6th at 6 p.m. at the Capitola Branch Library. Where can people find this information? Is there a centralized location? Is it through the Santa Cruz Public Library's website if they want to go and find out about this dyslexia support group and the upcoming simulations?
Yes, I would encourage them to go to the library website,
Okay.
and you can put in the search bar dyslexia, and then these 3 events will pop up.
Okay. And then the 3 dyslexia simulations, which again are a hands-on experience designed to increase awareness of the difficulties and frustrations that people with dyslexia encounter daily, and where participants will rotate among 6 learning stations that simulate language-related tasks similar to those encountered in a classroom. And facilitators will also discuss the common signs of dyslexia in childhood, are taking place October 2nd, 6:30 at the Scotts Valley Library, and October 11th at 12 p.m. The Live Oak Annex, which is next to the Simpkins Swim Center. And again, October is Dyslexia Awareness Month. So, Megan, what drew you to be so involved in, I mean, you're an educator. We've already talked about that. And you have a passion for helping folks with literacy and reading. But why dyslexia? Because there's more than one learning disability. What was it that drew you to this particularly? Do you have dyslexia, or do you know somebody in your immediate circle that does?
Yeah, I do not have dyslexia. I learned to read really easily. I actually never really thought about how I learned to read until I was hired to tutor students with reading disabilities. And when I went through the training, I had no idea that there was short vowels, long vowels, vowel teams, digraphs. I mean, it was eye-opening for me, and it made me realize when I was learning a second language that I didn't really have a strong foundation on the English language code, and I think it made learning a second language more difficult. I do have friends that have dyslexia. I just think that it's a human right and it's a social justice issue, because I see so many kids that are falling through the cracks in our school system, and it's always been a passion, and I'm just grateful now that I have more time to continue my education, to learn and to hold these simulations.
Yeah, and as you mentioned before, 20% of the population have some symptoms of dyslexia, and you're saying it could actually be far higher than that?
No, I don't think it's far higher than that, but I do think like the statistics that the U.S. Department of Education estimated in 2018, when they said that there was like 2 million children, they think it's actually more. So no,
so the accurate number would be around 20%.
20%, that's correct.
So, if 100 people are listening right now, about 20 of them may have symptoms of dyslexia. So that's a pretty sizable chunk.
Yeah, it's a significant
folks.
portion of our population.
So you mentioned, we were discussing this earlier, that you feel strongly that learning to read is a fundamental right and a social justice issue. Can you address that? What you mean by that?
Sure. So right now, according to the National Literacy Institute, about 54% of adults have a literacy below the 6th grade level, and California has the lowest adult literacy rate of all the states.
How is that? Why is that, do you think?
Well, it's super distressing. And I think that's like a whole other conversation.
Yeah. Right.
There's a podcast that called Sold a Story by Emily Hanford, and she really delves into why we have so many reading problems now. There was the whole language philosophy. So, our government has been picking programs that are not science-based.
Okay.
And so fortunately, that is starting to change across different states.
Okay. But I wonder why California has the lowest adult literacy rate. I mean, perhaps you don't know the answer to that, but that just kind of shocks me a little bit.
Yeah, it shocks me too.
So in what way do you view this as a social justice issue? I mean, I would think of something like if you aren't reading proficiently, you're kind of, in a sense, you're a bit sidelined in our society, and you may not have the ability to really be fully educated, because that's much of the way we learn is through reading. So is that what you mean when you say a social justice issue?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you can't read, then you're not able to comprehend what you're able to read at a baseline level. And if you're not able to comprehend, then you're not able to analyze, and you're not able to think critically. And I think what we're seeing in our society right now, with so much polarization and so much anger and vitriol, I think that people are not taking the time to be critical thinkers and analyzers. And I do think that has some root in our low literacy levels.
Fall prey to disinformation and misinformation more easily. Yeah. And then, of course, this probably is obvious, but if you are struggling with literacy, you're probably going to have trouble with reaching your full potential, whether it be in educating, through education or your career or, even just being a part of your community. So, that's a fully active participant.
Yeah.
You can advocate for yourself and those around you.
Right. And then I do want to say that a lot of people with dyslexia, they learn how to compensate, and they can actually make them a very strong individual because they've had to deal with so much grit and to have to overcome so many challenges. And I have a good friend who has dyslexia, and she's now in her 60s, and she still feels embarrassed about mispronouncing words, her lack of ability to read material quickly, and her writing ability. And when she was in elementary school, she was put in the ball closet to learn with a student who had cognitive disabilities, and she barely passed high school. But then she went on to build a highly successful company. But that feeling of embarrassment is still with her today. The stigma. Right.
And the kind of false labeling of you is perhaps, as you mentioned, dyslexia is not due to a lack of intelligence or a desire to learn, but yet folks experiencing it may end up being, stigmatized and stuck in a ball closet.
Right. But it also can make them stronger. I'm not advocating to not do early screening and
right. So tell us a little bit about the two Senate bills that were passed in 2024 and why it's important for listeners to know about those. They, again, require schools in California to screen all kindergarten through second grade students this year for dyslexia and other learning disabilities. Can you talk a little bit about that legislation?
Yes. So we're focusing on these things that are not going well, but, it's great that California finally is catching up. And as you mentioned, there was two Senate bills, Senate Bill 114 and Senate Bill 691, which required schools in California to screen all kindergarten through second grade students this year. And again, I'm not working in the school system right now, but if you have any listeners that are teachers, I would love to know how this is being implemented and what intervention programs are being used to help these struggling readers. Because as we know, these Senate bills are great, but what is the implementation and how are our schools staying faithful to that?
Yeah, and this is about early detection.
This is, the early screening. Yep.
And
then-
how to then intervene
Exactly.
in the school setting
Exactly.
to help these students reach their full potential.
Right. Because that's, all of the science says that when students are screened and identified early and they get early intervention, they don't have such a wide gap as they go forward in their educational career. And then there is another bill that is actually the California legislature unanimously approved. And that's pretty amazing that we could all agree
Wow, that
in
is.
the legislature. And they approved Assembly Bill 1451, which authorizes new training and instructional phonics-based reading materials. And now it's just waiting for Gavin Newsom's signature.
Which, being famously dyslexic, he's likely to sign, correct?
Right, we hope so.
Okay.
And
He's going to make a decision by October 13th?
that's correct.
Okay, is there a way that listeners can weigh in on this, or is it just past that point?
I think it's past that point.
Okay,
Yeah, I was
okay.
getting a lot of emails saying, please write in. And now I think it's,
Okay.
we're just waiting.
So the comment period's over. Just waiting for his
Correct.
decision. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and then if educators want to interact, they can come to this dyslexia simulation, these 2 dyslexia simulations that are coming up on October 2nd at the Scotts Valley Library at 6:30 p.m. from 6:30 to 8:30, and again on October 11th from noon to 2 at the Live Oak Annex, which is next to the Simpkins Swim Center, and you can register on the Santa Cruz Public Library's website. Again, October is Dyslexia Awareness Month, and this simulation will be a hands-on experience designed to increase awareness of the difficulties and frustrations that people with dyslexia encounter daily. And participants will rotate among 6 learning stations that simulate language-related tasks similar to those encountered in a classroom, and facilitators, of which you will be one, correct?
That's
Megan?
correct.
We'll also discuss the common signs of dyslexia in childhood, and it's an opportunity for folks who don't have or don't experience dyslexia to experience it, to walk in the shoes of someone who does, and also for educators to get together and talk about it, and for parents or community members generally to come and learn.
That's exactly right. It's a broad audience.
Okay. And before we run out of time, I also want to mention that dyslexia support group that will be meeting November 19th, February 25th, and May 6th at 6 p.m. at the Capitola Branch Library. It's a welcoming and informative support group dedicated to parents and educators of children with dyslexia, a safe space to share experiences, learn strategies, and connect with others who understand the unique challenges and strengths of dyslexic learners. So we only have about 5 minutes left in the show, and I want to make sure that we've covered everything you wanted to talk about. Earlier we were talking about you were excited to read in the Santa Cruz Sentinel that the Pajaro Valley Unified School District will go before the school board for final approval to train elementary school teachers to become experts in teaching literacy. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I just read it this morning, but I am just thrilled because they are going to be providing teachers a $1,500 stipend every month that they're going through this training.
Nice.
So,
And that's something they could perhaps do in addition to working?
yes,
Yeah. Okay.
that's my understanding.
Good.
Yes, and so I put it out to my group of reading intervention specialists today, and everybody was just so excited that Pajaro Valley is taking this step. And I just want to read a quote that Superintendent Heather Contreras stated in the paper this morning, and it says, "The collective goal is centered on students as we work together to advance progress in student reading, which will positively impact overall learning success."
Yeah.
So tomorrow their school board is going to be voting on this.
Okay. And is that open to the public, members of the Pajaro Valley Unified School District?
I don't know
Oh.
that. That's a
Okay.
good question.
Okay. Huh. Well, that was in the Santa Cruz Sentinel. That was in the Santa Cruz Sentinel this morning?
This morning.
Okay, so people can find that on the Santa Cruz Sentinel website, or if you get the physical paper, look for that article about the Pajaro Valley Unified School District going before the school board for final approval to train elementary school teachers to become experts in teaching literacy. And as Megan mentioned, if this goes through, this would be a $1,500 a month stipend to participating educators.
Right. And it looks like the annual stipend is maxed out at $15,000 per year. which means that teachers could be paid an additional $30,000 for taking part of the 2-year process.
Okay, that's very encouraging.
Yes, I
yeah.
agree.
So the title of that article is
Board Considers Literacy Program.
Okay, I'll take a look for it later in the Santa Cruz Sentinel from today. So, Megan, we only have a few minutes left. I want to make sure that we've covered everything that you wanted to communicate to our listeners today.
Yeah, I'm just super grateful for this opportunity, George.
Yeah, of
Thank
course.
you, because I just think, like I said, this is such an important topic, and getting it out.
With 20% of the population potentially being affected, yeah. I mean, not that it wouldn't be important if it was only 5%, but as we already discussed, many listeners could be experiencing, issues around dyslexia.
Right.
So, yeah, and we've got October is right around the corner here
tomorrow.
So yeah. So that's Dyslexia Awareness Month. And again, just before we wrap up the show, I want to remind listeners about the dyslexia simulations coming up October 7th and October 11th. You can register on the Santa Cruz Public Library's website. As Megan mentioned, you just type dyslexia into the search bar when you go to the website, and you'll come up with these events that are taking place for Dyslexia Awareness Month in October. And you can also find information about the dyslexia support group that takes place at the Capitola Branch Library there as well on the library's website. So I see you have a book sitting there, Overcoming Dyslexia. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I guess this book was my Bible when I was getting my certification. It's by Sally Shaywitz, and she's the co-director of the Yale Center for the Study of Learning and Attention. And so I have it all. This is the first edition, and then she just came out with a new edition, so I felt like I needed to bring the second edition, so I've got my two Bibles.
Overcoming Dyslexia. Yes. And how do you spell her last name?
Shaywitz.
Who might be interested?
SHAYWITZ. MD.
A book you could perhaps get from the Santa Cruz Public Library.
That's exactly right.
Overcoming Dyslexia.
Yes.
Thank you so very much for joining me today on the show, Megan Grenier. Excuse me.
Thank you, George.
To tell us about October Dyslexia Awareness Month and the opportunities coming up through the Santa Cruz Public Library. Again, listeners can go to their website and search in the search bar for dyslexia, and you'll come up with the support group, the upcoming dyslexia simulations in October. Thank you again, Megan.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And it is time now to wrap up Talk of the Bay. Thank you so much for listening. I'm your host, George Cadman. This is 90.7 KSQD and online at ksqd.org. Thank you so much to our listeners and our donors.